Tonight, we step into the rowdy, smoky, and suspiciously sticky world of the medieval tavern. The beating heart of every town, the place where gossip traveled faster than messengers, and where a knight, a farmer, and a bard could all get drunk, robbed, and possibly arrested in the same evening. Forget Yelp reviews or neon signs. In a medieval town, you found your tavern by sound. The laughter, shouting, and someone howling a questionable ballad about a goose. Through muddy streets, past the blacksmith's clang, and the fishmonger's endless, bragging about eels, you finally spot it. A crooked wooden building leaning, like it had one too many pints. The sign swinging above the door. A crude painting of either a barrel or a bear, maybe both. Doesn't matter. This is it. The tavern. The front step is slick with spilled all. The iron, hinged door groans like it's auditioning for a ghost story. And then, bam, you're hit with a wall of heat and smell. And that smell, imagine stale beer, wet wool, smoke, sweat, onions boiled beyond recognition, and a mysterious undertone that should probably be investigated by the local priest. No perfumer has ever dared bottle it, though someone probably should as a weapon. Inside, the ceiling is low, the tables wobble like they're alive, and the floor isn't wood. It's dirt, covered with straw pretending to help. Spoiler, it doesn't. You pick your way across carefully, because one wrong step, and your ankle, deep in something better left undescribed. The crowd is chaos incarnate. A man is passed out, with a ladle still in hand. Another is loudly insisting someone stole his chicken. A1, dog gnaws on a bone beneath a table, like he owns the lease. Laughter explodes in one corner, while in another, two men nearly come to blows over the price of a pig. Nobody pays attention to the woman, who just slammed her mug hard enough to spill half her ale, because around here, that's basically polite conversation. This, my friends, is the medieval tavern, loud, lawless, and alive. A place where you could find warmth, danger, and dysentery, all under the same thatched roof. The left side of the room leans away in unison, and you realize, despite the overwhelming assault on your senses, this place has a strange kind of welcome. The tavern is alive. It's rough, unfiltered, loud, and grimy. In short, it's the medieval version of a community hub, just with less hygiene and about 400% more shouting. You find a seat. It's damp, probably cursed, but for now, it's yours. At first glance, the layout looks like it was designed by someone drunk during an earthquake. Tables wobble, benches groan, and occasionally a wooden crate is pretending to be a chair. Too close together in some spots, awkwardly far apart in others. It all depends on how much you've had to drink. The hearth is the true centerpiece, a roaring fire jammed against one wall, pumping out warmth, light, and a steady supply of indoor smoke inhalation. People crowd around it like moths with mugs. Those who manage the best spots cling to them like treasure. Those stuck in the cold corners, well, that's what ale is for. The bar, if you can even call it that, is usually just a thick plank balanced across barrels, sagging under the weight of mugs, elbows, and bad decisions. Behind it stands the tavern keeper. The one true ruler of this chaotic kingdom. Meanest don't exist. You ask what's on offer, and the answer is almost always, or shut up and wait. A narrow, splintery staircase creaks overhead, leading to rooms that double as lodging or gambling dens, or maybe the last resting place of anyone who insulted the barmaid. No one really asks. The walls are stained black with smoke. Windows are covered in greasy cloth or animal hide. Every surface has been polished not by cleaning, but by centuries of elbows, boots, spilled drinks, and possibly chickens. Somehow, it works. Everyone knows where to sit, when to shout, and when to duck. And at the center of this madness is the tavern keeper. They don't wear a crown, but don't be fooled. This person runs everything. Equal parts chef, server, accountant, bouncer, and executioner of barroom justice. If it's a man, he's built like a barrel wrapped in gristle, with the voice of someone who gargled gravel. If it's a woman, and it often is, she's sharper than a blacksmith's file, and she can silence the room with a single look. Either way, they've seen worse, heard worse, and mopped blood out of the straw before sunrise. The tavern keeper remembers everything. Who paid, who owes, who's drunk beyond sense, who's cheating on their spouse. They settle fights, break scams, and they're always the first to grab the nearest club when a brawl erupts. You do not mess with the tavern keeper. Around them, young assistants, sons, daughters, or orphans drafted into service, dash about carrying barrels twice their weight, dodging boots, and praying not to spill. They're the invisible gears of the machine, keeping things moving. So while the tavern might look like chaos to you, it's actually a delicate ecosystem. And in the middle of it all, standing like a storm god in an apron, is the one person keeping the ale flowing and the roof from caving into riot. The tavern keeper. You finally settle onto your creaky bench, throat dry, boots still damp. And now it's time for the main event, the drink. Don't expect a wine list. Don't expect polished mugs. This is a medieval tavern. Your choices are limited, lukewarm, and possibly life-threatening. Let's start with the classic choice ale. Thick, cloudy, unfiltered, and brewed in the back room, where the tavern dog probably sleeps. It comes with bits of grain, yeast, and maybe the ghost of the last man's mustache, floating on top. It's not cold, because there's no ice, and you never ask how long it's been in the barrel. You just drink and hope. Next up, mead. The honey wine that sounds fancier than it is. Sweet, strong, and occasionally explosive. If the tavern keeper brewed it themselves, it might taste like golden nectar, or like bee venom mixed with regret. Then there's cider, sharp, tangy, and made from apples that were either fresh last week or rotting on the ground 3 weeks ago. Served in cracked mugs, it's the drink of choice in orchard, rich regions, or for anyone trying to forget the smell of the man beside them. Wine. Technically, yes, but unless you're in Southern Europe, or drinking with nobility, it's likely watered down, soured, and served with sarcasm. The good stuff is reserved for bishops, lords, and the lucky merchant who just sold a mountain of salt. And water. Only the bravest order it, because water is a gamble. Clean wells are rare, boiling costs fuel, and invisible death lurks in every cup. That's why even children drink ale. It's not about the buzz. It's about not dying of dysentery before you're 8. No one here is measuring shots or shaking cocktails. Drinks come in wooden, clay, or tin mugs, sometimes with last night's stew still clinging to the rim. If it's wet and won't kill you immediately, it's considered a vintage. But then comes food. And food, in a medieval tavern, is really just survival with seasoning. The star dish. Pottage. A thick stew that never really ends. It's been bubbling in the same pot since Monday, and now it's Thursday. New ingredients go in daily. Nothing comes out. It's not so much a meal as a medieval time capsule. If you're lucky, today's flavor is rabbit or pigeon. If not, it's mystery meat, with extra mystery. Your bowl is wood or clay. Your spoon is either your own or your fingers, and knives are strictly BYO. Bring your own. Bread comes with it, though bread might be generous. If it's fresh, it's tough. If it's old, it doubles as masonry. The cheese smells like a boot left too close to the fire, and the fish, if there is any, was probably caught back when the king still had hair. Yet, in the flickering firelight, with noise all around, and something hot in your hands, it's not bad. It fills you. It warms you. And if you don't think too hard about what's floating in your bowl, it's even comforting. But the real feast isn't on the table. It's in the people. To your left, a farmer already 4 Allahs deep retells, for the 3rd time, the heroic saga of his cow giving birth sideways. He slaps your shoulder like you're his oldest friend, or maybe just sturdier than the pig he usually drinks with. In the far corner, a hooded stranger nurses a mug in silence. Could be a runaway monk. Could be a bandit. Could just be terrible at eye contact. Either way, you're not making small talk, unless you want to vanish behind the stables. By the hearth, a soldier in dented armor is spinning a tale of dragons, Frenchmen, and a talking sword. It's definitely false. But his audience doesn't care. They cheer, they laugh, and they buy him another round. This is the tavern, a stew of people, stories, lies, and all bubbling together under one smoky roof. No one cares if the soldier's story is false. His tankard is full, and his audience is laughing. A merchant shouts grain prices no one asked for, pulling out coins like he's begging to be robbed by midnight. 2 locals play dice on a warped table. One cheats. The other knows, but he's saving the fight for when his owl runs dry. In the corner, a bard strums his lute, voice cracking on the high notes of a love song he clearly just invented. No one minds. He's wearing pants and his instrument has at least half its strings. That's already better than last night's performer. Women weave through the crowd. Some working the crowd. Sharp-eyed, confident, and dangerous if tested. They'll flirt, laugh, or knock your teeth out depending on your tone. Children dart between legs, snatching bread or coin, and nobody stops them. It's just part of the rhythm. The tavern isn't just a place. It's a performance. And tonight, you're part of the cast. Forget ballads. The real soundtrack of a medieval tavern is chaos. Mugs slam on wood, some cheerfully, others shattering. And both are met with applause. Laughter erupts, huge belly roars that sound like wild boars breaking free. None of it makes sense. A farmer laughs at hay jokes. A knight chuckles at the word pottage. A monk wheezes every time someone says, duck. Don't ask. Voices overlap in a rooster fight of sound. Arguments, tall tales. Scripture quoted to win bets. The barkeep shouts orders. A barmaid swears at a grabby drunk. And someone yells, Anacharo-nd, like it's a battle cry. In the background, the bard loops the same 4 chords, occasionally bursting into songs about chickens or noblemen who wore their pants backward. Dogs bark. A goat bleats. No one knows why there's a goat. Chairs scrape across dirt floors like thunder. It's not music, but it's rhythm, the heartbeat of the tavern. And then silence, just for a second. 3 heartbeats. Then someone farts with heroic force and the music starts again. That's the tavern. Loud, filthy, ridiculous, alive. But once the owl flows and the stew settles, the tavern transforms. It becomes a medieval casino, minus the velvet rope, plus way more yelling. Gambling is the true sport of the night. Dice clatter across tabletops like thunder, followed by cheers, curses, and inevitable accusations of witchcraft. No one trusts the dice. Everyone plays them. Cards appear in some corners, thick, hand-painted, and always missing one or two. The rules shift with every dealer. Sometimes the goal is the highest number, other times matching pictures, or just whatever makes sense after 3 mugs of cider. It's poker if poker came with more slapping. The wagers. Anything goes. Copper coins. Boots. A goat. Someone bet their own freedom for the night. Spoiler, they lost. The regulars play slick, rolling slow, shuffling fast, smiling too wide. Everyone cheats. That's half the fun. A hidden die here. A marked card there. A mysterious cough, just as the lucky player leans in. In the tavern, winning big means buying the next round, or risk being relieved of your purse in the alley. Losing badly. Smile, pretend you meant to, and slowly edge your chair toward the door. But dice and cards aren't the only games. Side contests erupt everywhere. Arm wrestling, thumb wars, and the ever-popular challenge, who can drink the most without collapsing. The winner earns cheers, the loser earns a night under the table, and a headache that lasts until market day. Luck here isn't just a pastime. It's survival. And every coin, every wager, every pair of pants is up for grabs. Then, as the night deepens, and the air grows thick with smoke, ale, and sweat, the tavern shifts. A new performance takes the floor. Storytelling. A bard clears his throat in the corner, plucking at a half-tuned lute that squeaks like a dying goose. Missing a few teeth, but none of his confidence, he belts out a ballad about a knight who fell in love with a mermaid and drowned nobly while reciting poetry. Nobody believes him. Everybody listens, because here, truth is optional. Entertainment is everything. Around the room, well-fueled courage spreads. A farmer swears he once wrestled a bear. Another insists he saw a witch turn a cow into a goat. A third loudly claims descent from Charlemagne on his mother's cousin's side. No one buys it, but everyone leans in anyway. Boasts become ballads. Mishaps become myths. Someone tells a joke so bad it becomes legendary. Someone else recites stolen poetry from a monastery scroll. The crowd claps, jeers, or throws bread, depending on the quality or quantity of the tale. If you're lucky, a real minstrel or professional storyteller might be passing through, their words polished, their songs long, their power to rouse a crowd dangerous. But they too know the tavern's golden rule: never let facts ruin a good story. By midnight, half the room is acting out the saga of the one-legged knight who fought 6 bandits with a ladle. You laugh, you cheer, and you forget it's all nonsense. Because in a medieval tavern, every liar is a legend. If the story is good enough. But then something changes. The bard drifts into his third song about unfaithful shepherdesses, and suddenly the room shifts again. Everyone's feeling bold. Everyone's feeling romantic. Welcome to medieval flirting. Subtlety left hours ago. Eye contact, sometimes with both eyes, sometimes not, is the first move. A man with 2 teeth slurs, "My lady." Your beauty burns brighter than the hearth. She responds with a bread crust to the forehead. The crowd cheers like it's a justing match. Others try more gently, offering to refill mugs, carrying bowls of stew and spilling them, or mumbling clumsy compliments. If you're a woman here, patron, staff, or merchant, you're fending off at least 3 would-be poets, 2 arm wrestlers, and 1 man attempting to impress you by balancing a knife on his nose. Sometimes it works. Usually it ends with a black eye or a lighter coin purse. For those seeking more than clumsy charm, courtesans move through the room with practiced grace, knowing who has coin, who has charm, and who will pass out before reaching the stairs. Deals are discreet. repercussions or not. And jealousy. That's tavern fuel. A stolen glance, a wandering hand, or laughter at the wrong bard's joke about bishops. Any of it can ignite a fight. A bench splits in half, mugs fly as weapons, tables overturn. Yet, amid the chaos, real sparks do fly. A baker's daughter laughs with a traveling stonemason over stew. Two farmers bond over a shared hatred of turnips. A monk accidentally flirts with a nun. Because in the medieval tavern, romance is messy, noisy, and always worth a story. Love, or something dangerously close to it, manages to survive even in the roadiest corners of the tavern. Here, romance is equal parts charm chance, and not passing out face, first into your stew mid-sentence. You might win a heart. You might earn a slap. Either way, it'll be a story by sunrise. But then, inevitably, it happens. Maybe someone spills a drink. Maybe someone cheats at dice. Maybe two men claim the same bench. Or maybe someone insulted someone's mother, goat, soup, or both. Doesn't matter. The fuse is lit. A stool flies. A tankard shatters. Someone yells, "Hold my bread!" before launching themselves over a bench with all the grace of a drunken catapult. Nobody is surprised. Nobody even stops drinking. A tavern fight isn't a rare event. It's practically part of the menu. And while it sounds terrifying, it's usually more slapstick than lethal. Punches miss, drunks trip, someone crashes into dinner. Hair is yanked, beards are pulled, shirts are torn. The tavern keeper bellows like a warlord, ladle in one hand, club in the other. Half the room joins in without even knowing why. The other half cheers, bets, or just slides their mugs to safety. Blades almost never appear. Everyone knows that once swords come out, the tavern is gone, and no one wants to be banned from the only place in town with hot stew and warm ale. Eventually, it burns out. A man slumps to the floor and decides it's a good place to nap. Another leans against the wall and reconsiders his life choices. And just like that, the storm passes. The fighters are dragged apart, mugs refilled, and a new song breaks out. 10 minutes later, even the guy with the bleeding nose is laughing again. No grudges, no lawyers, just bruises, stories, and nicknames like One-Eyed Arnold or Bench Breaker Bill. Because in a medieval tavern, a good fight is just part of a good night, but eventually, the brawl fades, the bard passes out mid-ballad, and your stomach sits heavy with stew and cider. It's time to sleep, or at least attempt to. Don't expect comfort. This is no inn. Up the creaking staircase, past beams low enough to test your skull, you find the lodging. Small, cold rooms packed with strangers. Privacy doesn't exist. Beds are straw mattresses, thin and lumpy, crawling with what locals affectionately call companions. You keep your boots on and a dagger under the pillow. Not for comfort, but survival. Blankets, smells, and garlic breath are all shared equally. Too poor or too drunk for a bed, you curl up downstairs, on a bench, under a table, or by the hearth next to a dog that may or may not belong to anyone. You'll be stepped on, sneezed on, maybe used as a footrest. The tavern never truly sleeps. There's always muttering, snoring, logs popping in the fire, or a fart echoing proudly in the rafters. Somehow, you drift off anyway. And then, dawn. Pale light stabs through greasy shutters, poking at your eyelids like an unwelcome guest. The tavern has changed. Not quiet, exactly. Just quieter in a defeated sort of way. The mugs are empty, the floor sticky, the air heavy. You open one eye, your neck sore, your mouth dry, your boots, hopefully, still on your feet. This is morning in a medieval tavern. No kings, no peace, just snoring straw, and the lingering heartbeat of the night before. The tavern fades behind you. Its smoke, laughter, and chaos linger in memory, like the smell of ale in your boots. But history is vast, and our journey carries us far from muddy streets and wooden benches. Tonight, we step into the desert sun, into a world of stone temples and golden crowns. Before she became the most iconic face of ancient Egypt, immortalized in limestone, her high cheekbones and serene gaze gazing across millennia, Nefertiti was a mystery. Her very name means, "The beautiful one has come." Yet no one agrees where she came from. Some believe she was the daughter of a powerful official named Ai, perhaps even the sister of Akhenaten. Others insist she was a foreign princess, sent to Egypt as part of a marriage alliance. Her beginnings are uncertain, but her impact is undeniable. When she enters the historical record, she doesn't drift in quietly. She strikes like lightning. Sudden, brilliant, transformative, she arrives not as a passive queen, but as an equal, a partner to Akhenaten in a reign that would defy centuries of tradition. Together, they would dismantle the ancient pantheon of Egypt, elevate a single god, the Aten, the radiant sun disk, and turn Egypt's religion, culture, and very identity upside down. This was no ordinary queen. This was Nefertiti, beautiful, mysterious, powerful, and the stage was set for one of history's boldest experiments in faith and rule. It was a radical, almost heretical, shift, and Nefertiti wasn't sitting quietly on the throne while her husband led the charge. She was there at the forefront, officiating ceremonies, offering sacrifices, and even portrayed in art smiting enemies, a role usually reserved only for male pharaohs. Other queens lingered in the background of history. Nefertiti was everywhere. She appears in more artwork from this period than Akhenaten himself. In those carvings and reliefs, she isn't diminished or hidden. She stands tall, sometimes larger than life, power radiating from her very hands. And in a society where the pharaoh was divine, her closeness to Akhenaten suggested more than simple marriage. To some, she wasn't just queen, she was co-ruler. But Egypt wasn't ready for this upheaval. The priesthood resented the destruction of their temples. The worship of Amun and the great pantheon was erased, chiseled off monuments, their names scraped from stone. Even the capital itself was moved to Akhenaten, today known as Amarna, a new city built in honor of the sun. Through it all, Nefertiti's image was everywhere, on walls, in hymns, in daily rituals of the new faith. Yet, just as suddenly as she had appeared, she vanished. No tomb, no body, no clear record of her death. It is as though history, after spotlighting her brilliance, chose to look away. And it is here, in that silence, that her legend truly begins. To understand Nefertiti's rise, you must understand the man at her side. Pharaoh Akhenaten. He wasn't born with that name. He was once Amenhotep IV, heir to 1,000 years of tradition. But when he took the throne, something changed. Some call it divine inspiration. Others call it madness. He abandoned the mighty god Amun, denounced the pantheon, and declared a single truth. There was only one god worth worshipping, the Aten, the sun disk. This wasn't just a new religion. It was an earthquake that split Egyptian civilization. Temples were shut down, priests stripped of power, statues smashed, cities abandoned, and in their place, Akhenaten built something new, a city where the sun itself would rise between the cliffs and pour divine light over its streets. And Nefertiti, she was not simply standing beside him. She was part of the revolution. In temple reliefs, she is shown praying to the Aten with the same reverence as Akhenaten. Their daughters stand with them, arms raised to the sun's rays. For the first time in Egyptian art, the royal family is intimate, human, even affectionate. No longer stiff statues of power, but scenes of kisses, of children tugging at their parents, of a queen who seemed to embody divine femininity. At times, Nefertiti overshadowed her husband. Some inscriptions even suggest she may have ruled as co-regent under the name Neferneferuiten. Whether out of love, strategy, or necessity, it was clear. Without Nefertiti, Akhenaten's revolution may never have survived. But revolutions are fragile. The gods do not like to be replaced. And the people of Egypt, though silent, were watching, waiting for the old order to return. At the height of her influence, Nefertiti wasn't just a queen. She was an icon. Egypt had seen powerful women before. Ahmose Nefertari, Hatshepsut. But Nefertiti was something different. She wasn't ruling through conquest or waiting in the shadows. She was reshaping Egypt's very soul alongside her husband. She bore Akhenaten 6 daughters, Meritaten, Meketaten, Ankhesempaten, and others, often depicted in those intimate family scenes under the sun's rays. Yet, curiously, no sons are ever confirmed. In a kingdom obsessed with heirs, this absence was both a political problem and a historical mystery. Some speculate Akhenaten had sons by other wives. Others whisper darker rumors that his relationship with Nefertiti blurred lines of taboo. Whether true or not, the fact remains. Her image as mother was central to her power. In art, she is shown cradling her daughters, their tiny arms reaching up to her face. It was not just motherhood. It was divinity. These weren't cold, lifeless statues. They were living moments carved in stone. Intimate, emotional, radiant. In an age where pharaohs were distant gods, Nefertiti's image as a mother softened the divine, making it human. But another side of her iconography hinted at something far greater. In several depictions, she wears the blue war crown, normally reserved for kings. She is shown driving chariots, smiting enemies, making offerings without Akhenaten at her side. These were not symbolic gestures. This was a queen stepping into the role of a pharaoh. Whispers suggest that as Akhenaten's health declined, perhaps from genetic disease or the crushing weight of his own revolution, Nefertiti began assuming more responsibility. Some believe she was already preparing for something beyond queenship. Perhaps she was preparing to rule alone. And then, silence. Around the 12th year of Akhenaten's reign, her name vanishes. No tomb, no funeral inscriptions, no mourning rituals. Just absence. For a woman depicted everywhere, her sudden disappearance is a black hole in history. What happened? One theory says she died, perhaps in childbirth. Her daughter Meketaten also disappears at the same time, hinting at a shared tragedy. But if that were true, why no royal funeral? Why no tribute to the woman who had been worshipped almost like a goddess? Others claim she fell from power. That palace politics shifted, and Nefertiti was quietly pushed aside. Some historians point to the shadowy figure of Smenkhare, a co-ruler who briefly appears in the record. Was he a half-brother, a son, or was Smenkhare simply Nefertiti herself, ruling under a new name? The most tantalizing theory suggests Nefertiti didn't vanish at all. She transformed. Evidence points to a ruler named Neferneferuiten, a name strikingly close to hers, who reigned in Egypt's final Amarna years. Inscriptions even use feminine grammar and refer to Akhenaten as her beloved husband. If this was truly Nefertiti, then she was not only queen but pharaoh, joining the rarest of ranks alongside Hatshepsut. But if she ruled, her reign was brief. The record ends in fragments, reliefs unfinished, cartouches defaced, a ruler erased. And then, like a torch in the dark, another name emerges. Tutankhaten, later Tutankhamun, a boy king barely old enough to hold the crook and flail. He would one day be the most famous pharaoh in the world, not for what he achieved in life, but for what death preserved in his untouched tomb. But here lies the mystery. Who was his mother? His father was almost certainly Akhenaten. But his mother? The records are maddeningly silent. Some say Nefertiti was only his stepmother. Others believe she was his biological mother, pointing to art that places a young Tutankhamun at her side in her final years of visibility. If Nefertiti was indeed his mother, it would explain much. His early reign bore the guiding hand of someone experienced. His reversal of Akhenaten's revolution, the restoration of the old gods, the return to tradition, may not have been the decision of a child at all. It may have been the last move of Egypt's most enigmatic queen. And that's where the intrigue deepens. Tutankhamun was only about 9 years old when he became king. A child can't steer a kingdom, let alone restore an entire religious order. Someone was pulling the strings. Someone with experience in politics, ritual, and the theater of power. Could it have been Nefertiti, ruling from the shadows? Or the high priest Ea, perhaps her father? Or both, working together to erase the chaos of Amarna and return Egypt to its traditional gods? One tantalizing clue comes from Tutankhamun's golden shrine. On it, a woman is shown anointing the boy king. A woman with features hauntingly similar to Nefertiti's. If that was her, it means she never vanished at all. She simply changed roles, moving from center stage to the wings, guiding Egypt with a quieter hand. But without a tomb, without a mummy, we are left with silence. If she truly shaped Tutankhamun's reign, her fingerprints are everywhere. But her name was deliberately erased, scrubbed from temples, omitted from king lists, as though someone wanted to erase a woman who once ruled like a god. And yet, ironically, it was Tutankhamun's fame that resurrected hers. In searching for the boy king's story, the world stumbled into Nefertiti's. Because for all her power, all her glory, Nefertiti left behind no certain tomb, no sarcophagus, no funerary mask, no final prayer carved in stone. In a civilization obsessed with the afterlife, her disappearance is staggering. Some say she was buried hastily, her memory condemned alongside Akhenaten's heresy. Others believe her tomb was never lost at all, just hidden. In 2015, radar scans of Tutankhamun's tomb revealed possible secret chambers behind the painted walls. Was Nefertiti lying just inches away, sealed in silence beside her stepson? The theory set the world alight. For a moment, it felt as if we might be one discovery away from the greatest revelation in modern archaeology. But follow-up scans proved inconclusive. Excavation slowed. Funding faltered. And once again, she retreated into myth. Yet her absence still speaks louder than stone. We have her image. Dozens. Hundreds. And one above all, the limestone bust now in Berlin, discovered in 1912 by German archaeologist Ludwig Borchert in the ruins of a sculptor's workshop at Amarna. The bust stopped him cold. In his diary, he wrote simply, no use describing it. You have to see it. And when the world did, Nefertiti was reborn. Not just as a queen, not just as a pharaoh, but as a symbol. Her long neck, her elegant crown, her unfinished eyes staring across centuries. She is beauty. She is power. She is mystery itself, frozen in paint and stone. Even in fragments, she is unforgettable. Germany acquired the bust during an age of loose antiquities laws, and Egypt has demanded its return for decades. To Egyptians, Nefertiti belongs home, in the land where the sun once touched her skin. where she stood beneath Aten's golden rays. But Germany refuses. They argue she's too fragile to travel. Others whisper it's about prestige. After all, Nefertiti is their Mona Lisa. She draws millions. She is a crown jewel. Wherever she resides, her face has changed how the world sees ancient women. She was not just a passive beauty. Her bust radiates something regal, commanding, almost defiant. She looks like someone who held secrets, made decisions, shaped empires. And the truth is, she did. It's astonishing how a single sculpture, silent and delicate, can resurrect someone otherwise lost to history. We may never find her tomb. We may never know how she died. But through this bust, Nefertiti achieved the dream of every pharaoh: immortality. Not in gold, but in memory. Her face may be still, but her story keeps moving, echoing louder than ever across the centuries. Nefertiti's life sits in the space between stone and silence, between what we know and what we long to believe. Few figures in history inspire such fascination and mystery. Over time, she's been imagined as many things: a goddess in human form, a political mastermind, a romantic tragic figure, or an ambitious strategist navigating collapse with poise. But what do we truly know? We know she was more than a royal wife. Her imagery rivals kings. She wasn't beside power. She was power. She stood at the center of one of history's boldest revolutions. Akhenaten may have envisioned the Aten cult, but it was Nefertiti who embodied it. She wasn't just serving the gods. She was their image on earth. And yet, when the backlash came, her name was erased, statues smashed, inscriptions defaced, her legacy deliberately buried. But history failed. Because here we are, 3,000 years later, still whispering her name. Why? Because myth survives where fact cannot. Because when a woman becomes both icon and enigma, time itself cannot erase her. Maybe that's exactly how Nefertiti wanted it, not explained, not contained, but eternal. More than 3 millennia have passed since she last walked beneath Egypt's sun. And yet, her shadow still stretches across our world, etched in museum glass, whispered through classrooms, splashed across novels and documentaries. Unlike most historical figures, she hasn't faded. If anything, she grows larger with time. And that is her true afterlife. In Egypt, immortality wasn't just mummification. It was memory. As long as your name was spoken, as long as your story was retold, you lived on. Nefertiti is still here. Beautiful, mysterious, eternal. China, a land where clouds cling to mountain peaks and the wind hums through endless bamboo groves. Here, a dragon lies coiled. Not a myth, not a fire, breathing beast of legend, but one carved from earth and stone by centuries of patient hands. This dragon is known as the Longji Rice Terraces, the dragon's backbone. Its scales ripple across the mountainside, shimmering with water, rice, and the pride of generations. From a distance, the hills resemble the body of a sleeping creature, undulating with perfect rhythm. Step closer, and you find something even more alive. Water trickles down channels dug by hand, whispering through the terraces. Seedlings flutter in the breeze, and at dawn, the mountain exhales as mist drapes the slopes like breath from the dragon's nostrils. These terraces weren't built in haste. Their story began over 700 years ago, when the Zhuang and Yao people looked upon the steep, unforgiving hillsides and asked, "How do we feed ourselves here?" Flat land was scarce. Machinery was non-existent. But their answer was patience. Armed with stone tools, bamboo baskets, and unyielding resolve, they carved the mountain inch by inch, year by year. Each level was shaped to hold water, to pass it gently to the next, to make gravity itself serve rice. One mistake could collapse an entire section. So the builders measured not with rulers, but with instinct. Generations of observation, seasons whispered to elders. Elders taught children. And slowly, the mountain began to yield, not in defeat, but in harmony. Over time, the terraces became more than fields. They became a living covenant between people and nature. The slopes did not bend violently. They were guided, shaped in flowing curves that echoed the land's pulse. Today, the dragon's backbone still feeds villages, but it offers more than sustenance. It offers wisdom, a reminder that greatness is not always forged in speed or force, but in persistence. To walk among the Longji rice terraces is to walk through human endurance itself, layer by layer, dream by dream. Every curve is a fingerprint, every stone wall a memory. From the valley floor to the cloud-kissed peaks, the terraces rise like a staircase into the sky. This dragon was never hunted. It was carved. Spring in the Longji Mountains does not arrive with blossoms. It arrives with water. Snow melts high in the peaks, trickling down into channels carved centuries ago. The terraces wait, glassy and silent. Then, as the dragon stirs, the people prepare. Planting begins. There are no tractors here, no machines to mark the season. Only hands, only patience. At dawn, farmers rise with the mist. Barefoot, straw hats pulled low, they balance baskets across their backs. The smell of wet earth clings to the air. The paddies shimmer like mirrors, ready to cradle life. Every seedling begins in a nursery bed. And one by one, line by line, each is transplanted by hand into the flooded fields. The water is cold, the mud thick, but the rhythm is ancient. Back bends, arm reaches, fingers press. Again and again, from sunrise to sunset. Children splash along the ridges, imitating their elders. There are no books, no lectures. Here, knowledge flows through repetition. Through the weight of mud on your feet and the distance between each green sprout. Tradition isn't taught. It's lived, and planting is never just labor. It is ceremony. Elders scatter the first seedlings as offerings to the mountain spirits. Songs rise with the mist. Each plant pressed into the soil is both food and faith, a promise to the land, to the ancestors, and to the children who will one day do the same. The pace is unhurried. No one rushes the dragon. No one races the mountain. This is patience turned into ritual. A meditation written in mud and water. Soon, tiny shoots rise from the fields like whispers. The terraces glow with green veins against the mirrored water. Each row is a prayer. Each seed, defiance against hunger and haste. The dragon is awake, and it is alive. Scattered along the ridgelines, nestled in the dragon's coils, lie villages like Pingan, Dazai, and Jinking. These aren't just settlements. They are living museums of heritage, where every timber home, every slanted rooftop, every winding path clings to the mountain like memory refusing to fade. The houses rest on stilts, protecting them from rain and slope. Their rooftops, dark and weathered, echo the very terraces they overlook. From above, they seem like wooden lanterns drifting on green waves. Inside, life is simple, warm, deeply communal. Families share meals over wood fires. The smell of rice wine and bamboo smoke drifts through the air. Here live the Zhuang and the Red Yao peoples, each with their own language, customs, and stories. You'll know the Yao women at once. Long black hair, uncut since childhood, coiled into elegant crowns upon their heads. Some let it fall like silk waterfalls into the river, a sight so graceful it borders on myth. Despite modernization creeping up the trails, traditions endure. Indigo, dyed cloth woven on wooden looms, reed pipes and bronze drums at festivals. wedding dances and harvest songs. Hospitality flows like water tea, brewed from mountain leaves, rice wine in carved gourds. Stories passed down from elders who still remember the mountain before electricity arrived. And always, there are the stories. Legends carried on the wind, whispered in the mist. The most enduring tells of a sleeping dragon whose spine rises in coils across the ridges. The terraces are its scales, shimmering with water, rising and falling with its breath. When fog covers the slopes, villagers say the dragon stirs, breathing gently in its sleep. Another tale speaks of famine long ago, when ancestors climbed the peaks and prayed to the heavens. The gods, moved by devotion, sent rain and taught them to carve the hills into steps. The dragon appeared to guide their hands, and the terraces were born. These beliefs aren't written in books. They live in songs sung during planting, in incense burned before the water is released, in the silence of misty mornings. To mock the dragon risks poor harvest. To forget the spirits invites flood. Even now, farmers pause before letting spring water flow, pouring rice wine into the earth, whispering a prayer. And whether you believe or not, something sacred hangs in the air. Maybe it's the silence. Maybe it's the clouds. Or maybe it's the quiet truth that this place is more than human work. It's a story still being told, not in ink, but in stone, water, and rice. For centuries, the dragon's backbone was a secret of the mountains, remote and quiet, known only to those who lived in its shadow. But no place, no matter how sacred, remains untouched forever. The road came. The wires followed. Tourists climbed the mountain trails with cameras, where farmers once carried baskets of mud. For the first time, the terraces faced a question they had never known. How do you survive the modern world? At first, there was fear. Would concrete replace timber? Would rituals become performances? Would culture turn into costume? But the people of Longji chose differently. They did not resist change. They absorbed it. Carefully, patiently. Like water flowing from terrace to terrace. Homes open to visitors, not as resorts, but as family stays. Guests share sticky rice steamed in bamboo, sip local wine, and sleep in wooden stilt houses where roosters still call the morning. Farming continues. Every season the paddies are still flooded, seedlings still planted by hand, sickles still sharpened by time. Tourism brings income, but rice brings life. One sustains the other. Some young villagers leave for the city, but many return. Something always draws them back. The sound of water running through channels, the stars reflected in the paddies, the lessons of patience whispered by the mountain. Festivals are louder now. Microphones join the drums. Signs in Mandarin and English stand beside sacred springs. Yet the rituals remain. Offerings are still made. Songs are still sung. Elders still lead. The dragon's backbone survives not because it is frozen in time, but because it breathes with time. It bends, it shifts, it adapts, yet it never breaks. And with each season, the dragon changes its skin. Spring turns the terraces into mirrors, reflecting the sky in silver pools. Summer blankets the hills in a rolling sea of green. Autumn burns gold with ripened grain, a feast for both land and people. Winter cloaks the dragon in frost and silence, letting it sleep until the cycle begins again. Each season writes its own poem. Spring reflects. Summer grows. Autumn feeds. Winter rests. The beauty of Longji is not just in its shape, but in its rhythm. A reminder that true beauty is never still. It is alive, moving, patient. In the end, the terraces are more than fields. They are a vow. A promise carved into the mountain, passed from hand to hand, season to season, generation to generation. The dragon's backbone is not just agriculture, not just engineering. It is the story of what happens when humans choose to live with the land, not against it. There were easier paths, but none more beautiful. Most visitors to Giza lift their eyes toward the horizon, toward the Great Pyramids and the timeless stare of the Sphinx. But what if the real secret doesn't tower above the desert, but sleeps beneath the water? Just beyond the familiar tourist paths, near the quiet village of Abu Rawash, whispers tell of something hidden. Local fishermen speak of a shape that emerges when the Nile runs low. A smooth-backed form, feline, symmetrical, too deliberate to be natural. Some swear they've seen a carved paw. Others say it is only stone, shaped by water and wishful eyes. But beneath the murky shallows, sonar scans have revealed something strange: geometric patterns, stone blocks placed with intent. A form that seems to echo the Sphinx itself, an underwater Sphinx. If real, its implications are staggering. The Great Sphinx of Giza is dated to around 2500 BCE, but this figure, buried beneath silt and reeds, may predate it by millennia. Built in an age when the Sahara was green and the Nile flooded wide across a lush, untamed land. Mainstream archaeologists dismiss the claim. To them, it is erosion, nothing more. Yet the grooves, the symmetry, the celestial alignments, they invite questions too big to ignore. Why does the land here feel charged, as if memory itself clings to the mud? Why is the site left unexcavated, ignored, unspoken in official accounts? The legend truly caught fire in the 1980s, when divers and amateur Egyptologists began publishing blurry photos and breathless reports. Grainy images of a lion, shaped figure beneath the water. Most were dismissed. But curiosity had already spread. What if there is more to Egypt's story than we've been told? What if the Sphinx we know is not the first, but a successor to something older, larger, and long forgotten? For now, the so-called Underwater Sphinx lies silent. Not sleeping, waiting for the day the world chooses to listen. It had geometry, legs, symmetry, even the faint outline of a face. If true, it wasn't just another rock. It was a revolution. Mainstream Egyptology rests on a carefully ordered timeline: the pyramids and the Great Sphinx, built around 2500 BCE, under Pharaoh Khafre, to suggest another Sphinx, older, submerged, eroded by ages of water, would force history itself to bend. Academics reacted with caution, even disdain. No excavation, no carbon dating, no stratigraphy, no proof. Most dismissed it as limestone shaped by Nile floods, water sculpting what the human eye desperately wanted to see. Egypt, after all, is a land where nature often mimics design. But the evidence kept resurfacing: grainy photos of feline curves, sonar scans showing geometric patterns. Too clean, too deliberate, too strange. And when official voices stayed silent, others filled the void. Authors, filmmakers, fringe theorists. They spoke of a Sphinx older than Egypt itself, a relic of a forgotten civilization swallowed by flood. Some whispered of Atlantis, others of pre-dynastic Egyptians whose memory was erased. In the 1990s, geologist Dr. Robert Schoch added fuel to the fire. He argued that the weathering on the Great Sphinx enclosure wasn't caused by sand and wind, but by rainfall. Heavy, sustained rainfall, thousands of years older than Egypt's fourth dynasty. If water shaped the Sphinx we know, could water also have hidden an older sibling? The so-called Underwater Sphinx lies on lower ground, near ancient floodplains. Satellite images hint at rectangular foundations. Ground penetrating radar reveals outlines that don't look like nature's accident. Erosion marks, rounded grooves, smooth channels speak of flowing water, the kind that hasn't touched Giza since the Sahara was green. Skeptics scoff, believers insist, and between them lies the silence of unexcavated stone. If it is real, the implications are staggering. Egypt's story wouldn't begin with Khafre. It would begin millennia earlier, in a forgotten age, when the Nile carved wild paths through a fertile land, when hunter-gatherers may have been monument builders, when myths of gods and lions may have first taken shape in stone. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey proved that hunter-gatherers could carve megaliths as early as 9600 BCE, long before writing, long before the wheel. If it happened there, why not here? If the Underwater Sphinx is real, it is not just a ruin. It is a memory of a world washed away by time, erased by sand, drowned by flood. For now it remains buried, not lost, not gone, just waiting. Not wind, not sand, rain, heavy prehistoric rain. That is what some researchers see etched into the stone. Erosion marks that don't belong to deserts, but to a greener, wetter Egypt thousands of years before the pharaohs. The Great Sphinx itself carries these scars. And now, at Abu Rawash, the so-called Underwater Sphinx shows the same signature, symmetry beneath silt, shoulders rising from mud, a foundation too level to be chance. If it is real, it is not a monument lost to wind. It is one drowned by water. A relic carved in an age when the Sahara was green, and then swallowed as the Nile shifted and floods buried its form. Skeptics call it coincidence, wishful eyes seeing lions in limestone. Yet water does not carve symmetry. It does not shape paws, align foundations, or mimic a sphinx already standing just miles away. So why does it remain unexcavated? Why does it sleep beneath layers of mud and silence? The answers lie not in the soil, but in politics. Egypt's heritage is fiercely guarded. Excavations require permits, funding, and above all, consensus. And consensus comes with an unspoken rule: do not rewrite Egypt's history without undeniable proof. A discovery this old, this disruptive, could topple timelines, challenge national pride, and spark a storm Egypt may not want to face. And so, the alleged Sphinx remains untouched, not forgotten, ignored. Perhaps out of caution, perhaps out of fear. The irony is striking. In a land devoted to preserving its past, one of its greatest mysteries may be left deliberately buried. But nothing stays buried forever. To the ancients, the Sphinx was more than stone. It was guardian, god, and riddle all in one. A lion's body, a human face, power fused with wisdom, a cosmic sentinel placed at thresholds, where the divine met the mortal. The Great Sphinx of Giza still towers 66 feet high, staring east into the rising sun, watching pharaohs come and go. Its origins remain debated, its purpose uncertain, but its silence endures. And now, if whispers of another Sphinx beneath the Nile are true, then Egypt may hold not just one riddle, but two. Some say the Great Sphinx was carved under Pharaoh Khafre. Others argue it is far older, its face reshaped across dynasties. But what would it mean if a second Sphinx, water-worn, hidden, perhaps even older, exists just miles away? It would change everything. Egypt left us no records of twin sphinxes at Giza. Yet in later Greco-Roman tradition, guardians often came in pairs, balancing the sacred with symmetry. Egyptian temples, too, were built with twin statues, twin obelisks, twin avenues of lions. Why not twin sphinxes? Some researchers whisper that this so-called Underwater Sphinx may not be a copy, but the original, a prototype carved in pre-dynastic times, centuries before Khafre. Its myth carried forward and refined into the monument we know today. If true, it suggests the idea of the Sphinx itself was inherited from a culture older than writing, older than pharaohs. The lion shape was no accident. In Egypt, lions represented the horizon, the eternal gates of dawn and dusk. A sphinx facing east watched the rebirth of the sun forever. To carve such a guardian was to carve eternity itself. And if one was placed before the pyramids were even dreamed of, then Egypt's story begins not at the dawn of dynasties, but in the last echo of something much older. Here lies the divide. On one side, traditional Egyptology, cautious, disciplined, demanding proof. Stratigraphy, inscriptions, radiocarbon dates. On the other, independent researchers, alternative historians, and curious outsiders, pointing to satellite images, lidar scans, geometric anomalies, and erosion patterns that look too intentional to dismiss. For academics, the fear is misinformation. For others, the fear is silence. That politics and tourism keep discoveries buried, not because they are false, but because they are too disruptive. The Underwater Sphinx has become more than a monument. It is a symbol of how we approach history itself. Do we only trust what is confirmed? Or do we follow the whispers of what might lie just beyond reach? Perhaps the truth is still buried, waiting beneath silt and water. Perhaps it is nothing more than rock, but its pull is undeniable. Because deep down, the story of a forgotten monument taps into something older than archaeology, the human sense of loss. We live in the shadow of ruins. Cities fall, languages die, civilizations vanish beneath waves, sand, and ash. We search the past not only for knowledge, but for identity, for the answer to the oldest questions. Who were we? How far back do our stories go? What have we forgotten in our rush toward tomorrow? And maybe that is why the Underwater Sphinx, real or not, refuses to let go of our imagination. Because it doesn't just promise discovery, it promises memory. If the Underwater Sphinx is real, if it was carved by hands before history even began, then it is more than stone. It is a voice, a whisper from a chapter we never knew existed. A monument drowned by floods, erased by shifting rivers, forgotten by dynasties. And yet, somehow, it still speaks. Not through inscriptions or temples, but through silence. A silence heavy enough to challenge everything we think we know. Maybe it was carved by an advanced culture long lost to catastrophe. Maybe it was nothing more than limestone shaped by chance. But either way, its power remains, because it forces us to ask questions. Questions about how fragile civilization is. Questions about how much of the past we've overlooked. Questions about whether myths are simply stories or memories. The Underwater Sphinx reminds us that history is not a closed book. It is a puzzle, scattered across deserts, rivers, and oceans, waiting for the tide to shift and reveal another page. Perhaps one day the waters will fall, and a lion's face will rise from the mud, undeniable at last. Perhaps it will remain hidden, a riddle too fragile to disturb. But even if we never prove it, the monument has already done its work, because it has made us wonder. And maybe that is the greatest legacy of all, not to give us answers, but to remind us that there are still mysteries worth chasing, still questions worth asking, still ruins waiting for someone brave enough to listen. The Underwater Sphinx of Giza, real or imagined, remains where it always has been, beneath the surface, beneath the mud, beneath the weight of time. Waiting.